Karoline Leavitt stood at the edge of the auditorium stage, her fingers tracing the edge of a folded note in her blazer pocket. It was a full house, hundreds of eyes blinking in silence, some curious, others skeptical. But none of that mattered to Karoline. Not anymore. 3 months ago, she had nearly walked away from everything, her career, her reputation, her belief in herself. Now, she was here not to win applause, but to speak one truth. A sentence. Just one. Before the crowd gathered that Thursday evening in Dallas, Karoline was not the kind of woman who invited conflict. She preferred collaboration to confrontation, and resolution over rivalry. But life doesn't always let you choose your battles, or your battlegrounds. Sometimes, the moment finds you. Jasmine Crockett had once been her friend. They weren't the same party, but they had bonded as rising stars with something to prove. They were both women in spaces that had never made room for them. Karoline with her sharp New England steel, Jasmine with her fiery Texas passion. For a while, their differences had made them stronger. Until truth got in the way. It started with a girl named Lydia. Lydia Morales was 17 when she first came to Karoline's office with a trembling voice and eyes that held oceans. She was undocumented, homeless, and clinging to the hope that someone, anyone, would listen. Karoline did. She didn't see a case file. She saw a daughter, a sister, a future. Jasmine, meanwhile, had publicly claimed to be a champion for girls like Lydia. But behind the scenes, Karoline had seen a different reality. Promises made, never kept. Support pledged, then quietly withdrawn. Funds diverted. Files closed. Lydia's case was among them. Karoline had wrestled with it for months. Should she speak out? Would it be seen as political revenge? Would anyone care? And then Lydia disappeared. One day she was texting updates from a shelter, the next, her number was disconnected. No social worker knew where she was. The center had lost track. She had slipped through the cracks, one of thousands. Karoline broke down that night, tears soaking her copy of A Wrinkle in Time, a book she had once given Lydia for her birthday. The margins were scribbled with Lydia's notes: "I want to be brave like Meg. I want to be seen." The next morning, Karoline asked her staff to schedule a town hall. "Everything?" her assistant asked. "No topic limits?" "Especially no limits," Karoline said. "I have something to say." The media got wind of it. Boom, Karoline Leavitt to confront Jasmine Crockett. The headlines played it like a showdown. Social media buzzed. Political junkies called it career suicide. But Karoline didn't flinch. She didn't care about spin. She cared about Lydia. When she stepped up to the mic that evening, her palms were damp. She scanned the crowd until her eyes locked onto Jasmine's. She was there, sitting straight-backed in a red jacket, flanked by 2 aides. Karoline took a breath. Then she said the sentence that would echo far beyond the walls of that auditorium. "Jasmine, I don't care about your office or your clout, I care that a girl you promised to protect disappeared because you chose ambition over compassion." The silence afterward was not empty, it was charged. You could hear the collective inhalation of truth breaking like thunder. Jasmine's expression didn't change. But Karoline saw the slight tremble in her lower lip. No one clapped. No one jeered. They just listened. Karoline continued, not to destroy, but to illuminate. She spoke of Lydia, of broken systems, of the thousands like her. She spoke of accountability, not blame. Redemption, not revenge. By the end of the night, something had shifted, not just in the room, but in the city. That moment, that one sentence, wasn't about ending a career. It was about beginning a conversation. And what followed would reshape everything that I and the days that followed Karoline's sentence. The headlines exploded. Political blogs dissected the moment with relish, pundits debated its implications, and clips of her words flooded TikTok and Twitter. But while the internet speculated, Karoline felt nothing but grief. She hadn't wanted to go public. She hadn't wanted to hurt Jasmine. But she also hadn't wanted Lydia to vanish. And silence, she realized, could be its own kind of betrayal. That weekend, she drove to the last place Lydia had stayed, a shelter on the east side of Dallas. A faded mural of clasped hands graced the outer wall. Inside, the director, a woman named Marla, remembered Lydia instantly. She was quiet, Marla said. But bright. That kind of brightness that feels borrowed from somewhere holy. Karoline held back tears. Do you know where she went? Marla hesitated. I don't know. But someone might. She called out, and a young woman stepped in. Barely 18, hair in tight curls, gaze sharp as glass. Her name's Tia, Marla said. They were close. Tia sat down across from Karoline, arms folded. Are you a politician? Karoline sighed. I used to be. Tia nodded slowly. Then why are you here? Karoline told her the truth. About Lydia. About Jasmine. About how she'd finally said what no one else would. When she finished, Tia studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny scrap of paper. She left this for you. Said if you ever came looking, you'd know what to do. Karoline's hands trembled as she unfolded it. The note read. I'm not lost. I'm choosing to be unseen until someone looks with love, not power. If you find me, bring hope. Not headlines. Karoline felt her breath hitch. Do you know where she is? She asked. Tia nodded. She's in San Antonio. At a church-run home for undocumented teens. Karoline stood. Will you come with me? Tia blinked. Why? Because she trusted you. And I want to earn that trust too. They arrived in San Antonio 2 days later. The shelter sat behind a quiet mission building with roses blooming in cracked pots and prayers etched into the wooden beams. Lydia was there. Older. Thinner. But alive. When she saw Karoline, she froze. Then she ran. But not away, toward. Karoline caught her in an embrace that felt like it could heal time itself. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have protected you better. Lydia just nodded, her cheek pressed against Karoline's shoulder. You came. That's enough. They stayed for 2 nights. Karoline sat with the girls. Ate with them. Listened. Learned. And for the first time in months, she stopped feeling like a politician trying to do the right thing, and started feeling like a woman simply doing it. On the 3rd day, Lydia asked a question. Why did you say her name? She asked. In front of everyone. Karoline hesitated. Because silence was making me sick. And you mattered more than my comfort. Lydia smiled. It mattered. Not because you hurt her, but because you finally saw me. But back in Dallas, the story had evolved. Reporters were calling it a career-ending moment. Jasmine's office released a carefully worded statement. Donations dried up. One committee position was quietly reassigned. Karoline watched it all from afar, her emotions mixed. She didn't want Jasmine destroyed. She just wanted justice to mean something. And then, the unexpected happened. Jasmine called her. Karoline stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Hello. A pause. Then. I deserved it. Karoline said nothing. I got caught up, Jasmine continued. I saw the game and forgot the people. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Karoline. I'm asking, what do I do now? Karoline closed her eyes. Start over. Quietly. Truthfully. Not in front of cameras. Among the people you hurt. Another pause. I'll try, Jasmine said. Then I'll help, Karoline replied. The next week, the two women appeared, unannounced, at the same shelter where Karoline had found Lydia. They served food. They sorted donations. They asked questions. And they listened. Not every girl there knew who they were. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the presence. The honesty. The humility. By the end of the month, Jasmine had stepped away from her office. Not because I was cancelled, she said. But because I was called, to grow, to repair, to rise better. Lydia watched the clip online. She looked at Karoline. Do you believe her? Karoline nodded. I believe people can change. Because I just did. 6 months later, the city of Dallas had changed in quiet, remarkable ways. It wasn't in the headlines. There were no grand speeches or photo ops. But the air in the community centers felt different. You could feel it in the way young women sat taller, in the way social workers moved faster, listened deeper. Something had shifted. At the center of it all was the Lydia House, a new shelter and youth outreach project founded by Karoline, Jasmine, and Lydia together. What began as a single sentence on a stage had blossomed into a sanctuary. They bought an abandoned library and transformed it with donated materials, sweat, and the kind of care that doesn't show up in policy papers. Walls were painted bright yellow and soft blue. The floors were lined with donated rugs. And on the main wall near the entrance was a mural, half phoenix, half dove. Underneath it were the words. Seen. Heard. Free. Lydia had painted it herself. Jasmine was there every day. She no longer wore power suits or gave press interviews. She wore jeans, old Converse, and a lanyard that read volunteer. She said less, but meant more. Her silence wasn't shame, it was growth. Karoline had turned down 3 offers to run for higher office. She smiled at each request and simply said, I'm running something more important. She taught a weekly writing workshop at the Lydia House. The girls called it Truth Time. Every Wednesday night, the room lit up with stories. Stories of pain, resilience, humor, and raw, unfiltered strength. One night, Lydia read a poem she had written. Her voice shook at first, but she steadied it, just like she had learned to steady her own life. They tried to erase me / with silence and forms / but a woman with a voice / found me in the storm. She didn't come with cameras / she didn't come to save / she came to see me / and I rose from my grave. When she finished, no one clapped. Instead, every girl stood. One by one. Not in applause. But in solidarity. Karoline wept. Not from sadness, but from awe. That night, long after the girls had gone to bed, Jasmine and Karoline sat on the rooftop of the building. The city stretched out below them, lights flickering like quiet hope. Do you ever think about that sentence? Jasmine asked softly. Karoline nodded. Every day. I thought it ended me, Jasmine said. But it freed me. Karoline turned to her. It wasn't about ending your career, Jasmine. It was about beginning your real one. They sat in silence for a while. You know what's wild? Jasmine said, eyes glinting with a tired joy. If Lydia hadn't vanished, none of this would exist. Karoline shook her head. She didn't vanish. She waited. For someone brave enough to look. A year later, Lydia gave a commencement speech at a local high school, her first ever, after earning her diploma through a GED program funded by the shelter. She stood in front of hundreds, wearing a bright red dress and a silver necklace Karoline had given her, a small dove on a chain. I used to think that power lived in buildings I couldn't enter, she said. Then I learned something better, power lives in people who choose love over ego, truth over comfort, and healing over revenge. She looked directly at Karoline and Jasmine, sitting together in the front row. "I'm not just graduating," she said. "I'm flying. And it's because someone dared to speak a sentence, not to end a life, but to begin 1,000 others." Epilogue. Karoline kept a journal on her desk at the Lydia house. On the first page, she had written the sentence that started it all. "Jasmine, I don't care about your office or your clout, I care that a girl you promised to protect disappeared because you chose ambition over compassion." But under it, she had added a second sentence, in pen much newer than the ink above. "And I thank you for choosing differently now, because together, we've found what really matters." Final message. In the end, boom wasn't an explosion of anger. It was the echo of truth. The sound of a system cracking open, just wide enough to let the light in. Moral of the story. True power doesn't come from position, it comes from compassion. A single sentence spoken with courage and truth can shatter silence, awaken accountability, and begin the journey toward healing. Even those who fall can rise again if they choose humility and service over ego. The story reminds us that real leadership is about lifting others, not climbing over them. Redemption is possible when we face our failures with honesty and make amends with action. One act of courage, especially when spoken for the voiceless, can ripple outward to transform entire communities. Being seen, heard, and valued is not a privilege, it is a right that compassionate people must protect. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply choose love over ambition. In a world where people are too often divided by fear and status, this story is a call to lead with humanity, and to never underestimate the power of one voice that dares to care.